Good morning. This is Substitute Tuesday, and I'm Dorothy Lee, Family and Consumer Science Agent, the University of Florida, Escambia County Extension Service. And today we're going to talk a little bit about vinegars. Vinegars have really received a bad reputation because they happen to be very sour, and people don't think that they are useful for a lot of different dishes because of their flavor content. But however, oftentimes vinegars add a lot of different types of flavor content to the recipe that we are preparing. Often we do not have the right type of vinegar that our recipe calls for. So there are some substitutes that we can use. Just going through our pantry and just kind of picking out a few of those most common vinegars will help us in making those substitutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about those different types of vinegar and how they are prepared and how we can substitute vinegars. Of course, this is just a standard vinegar. It's distilled white vinegar, and that's the most common vinegar. Most of us are very familiar with distilled white vinegar, which is used mainly in pickling. So if you made homemade pickles, or maybe your grandmother or your mother did a lot of pickling, or you like the beautiful pickles that are available in our local grocery stores, then this type of vinegar, white distilled vinegar, is what was used to prepare that particular type of pickle. It's made from something called grain alcohol, and it is used in also house cleaning products, which is very interesting. We're using it for pickling our cucumbers, for wonderful pickles, and we also use it a lot of times in our household cleaning. So there are some substitutes if you have a recipe that calls for the white distilled vinegar and it's not available in your pantry. You can always take a look at the next vinegar, which is the cider vinegar. And I have two types of cider vinegar here that I wanted to share with you. And actually they look pretty much the same, except for the colors are a little different. And that means that the strength that they were prepared of the apples, because this type of vinegar is made from apples. And it is a very sharp, pungent flavor, and most widely used type of vinegar. So if you don't have white distilled vinegar and your recipe calls for the white distilled vinegar, but you have this beautiful cider, apple cider vinegar in your pantry, then you can substitute that for the white distilled vinegar. One of the things that also I think we oftentimes are kind of reluctant to use is a vinegar called wine vinegar. Now, wine vinegar is made from, of course, from white grapes, red grapes, and rosé type of grapes, which rosé grapes are used in the production of that particular type of wine. So this gives it a wonderful flavor to a lot of the different dishes, and especially sauces that we're making when we're going to do something called reduction and reduce that particular vinegar down until it thickens and becomes a nice consistency sauce. So if you have a recipe that calls for wine vinegar and you don't happen to have that type of vinegar in your pantry, there's something called balsamic vinegar. And balsamic vinegar can be substituted for red wine vinegar. And there is another type of vinegar I wanted to share with you that also can be substituted for wine vinegar, and that's rice vinegar. Rice vinegar is used mainly in what we consider to be Oriental type dishes. It adds a flavor to the types of stir-fry cooking and Oriental dishes. With Oriental dishes, it adds some thickness to the sauces also. And the interesting thing about rice wine vinegar is the fact that it is made from something called sake, which is a very, very strong type of drink, alcoholic drink. So, but it adds some wonderful flavor to those sauces that we're preparing for, maybe for stir fry and for some of the dips that we use, maybe with our egg rolls and so forth. So another vinegar that we have is this wonderful, wonderful balsamic vinegar. And balsamic vinegar is all types of flavors. It comes apple flavored, the strawberry, it's the fruit flavored, it's herb flavored, and so forth. And it's used in something called reduction also, which causes it to thicken a little bit, and it's used in sauces and so forth. It's made oftentimes from different types of grapes in the preparation for that. Now, let's talk a little bit about that emulsifying, and that's adding acid to an oil. And acid, 1 part acid and 1 part acid and 3 parts oil. It's 1-to-3 ratio, and that adds to the strength of the particular vinegars as you're reducing it, and you can use it for a dressing. So if you had an apple flavored vinegar, then reducing it down and putting it over maybe some rice or some other dishes would give it some wonderful flavor. So what we usually say as a rule is creamy dressings, you use red wine vinegars, and for those greens that oftentimes we're tossing with some type of vinaigrette, we want to use a lighter vinegar and add the oil to it and reduce it for the particular vinegars and so forth. Let's talk about something called mother. Have you heard that vinegars have something called mother? And oftentimes when we see that cloudiness, maybe in a bottle of vinegar, we think, oh, it's spoiled. I can't use it. It's something that has happened to the vinegar. But really, it's really a cloudy substance that's floating in some of the bottles, and it's called mother. And it's composed of healthy bacteria and acetic acid. And as the vinegar tends to age, it tends to ferment. So this is all part of the fermentation process, which means that there's some health benefits from some of the different types of vinegar that go through that particular process called mother. So all different types of vinegars for all different types of dishes. Add different flavors to what you're preparing. And you can substitute a lot of the different types of vinegar. So you don't have to have a pantry full of different types of vinegars. Just know those that you can substitute when you're preparing the dish. So vinegars are wonderful for flavor. Vinegars are, as we said, for the household cleaners. And they also add a lot of flavor to our salads. I didn't mention much about salads, and salads are wonderful, healthy dishes that we have. So for more information, contact the University of Florida, Escambia County Extension Service.